Hey everyone and welcome to Storytime. My name is Jake and today we are going to be looking at the subreddit r/prorevenge. So sit back, relax and enjoy some Reddit stories. Landlord made me live in squalor. Now she's bankrupt. So here's the story of my previous living situation, which was at the best horrendous. I moved to what I thought at the time was a lovely 3 to 4 bedroom house with a nice offset garage and garden, perfect for my family consisting of myself, my partner, and my 3 kids. Well, a few weeks into moving in, the problems started to arise. We moved in just before Christmas and the weather was awful, torrential rain in fact, which is when we discovered the horrendous leak in my roof. I mean water teeming through the roof, into the walls and down my windows, resulting in all of my pots and pans having to sit in my windows to collect said rain. We then ended up realizing we had a leak through the roof in my daughter's room after she awoke by rain dripping on her while she slept. She was 2 at the time. We discovered over the course of the time we lived there that the electrics had never been checked and often shorted out. The gas pipes were under-regulated minimum gauge, and when the heating was on, we couldn't power the gas cooker or vice versa. The decking out back was rotten, and when stood on it, it just snapped. There was a 4 feet drop underneath this. A gas safety check showed that the combi boiler was broken and condemned, but they still refused to replace it. The heating system could never be switched off, even on the summer. All of these were reported and promised to be fixed. Over the time, the patio door hinge, which was snapped, completely fell off and we couldn't close it properly or lock it. Reported and we were told it would be fixed. Waited months and even though I was still paying full rent, it never got fixed. I eventually got fed up and reported it to the local environmental health team. They came out to inspect the property and raised concerns over the kitchen floor, which was warped and a major trip hazard. We also discovered from this visit the 4th bedroom, which was in the loft, was illegal due to how it had been done. No insulation, no heating, and bodged electrics. So the local environmental health team handed an order over to the landlord to repair all of these in a 3-month period. It didn't get done. The council took the landlord to court for breach and she ended up having to pay fines and was given another 6 weeks to rectify. A few of the jobs got sorted when I found my new house to move into. 2 years later, I've just found out through a close friend that the council proceeded to complete the jobs themselves, and the landlord has now been declared bankrupt due to this. Her house is being put up for auction. She will receive nowhere near what she needs to pay off her debts, and had to give up her other houses due to the bankruptcy laws, meaning she can't own equity, not even a decent car. If only she'd put the rent I was paying into fixing her house, it wouldn't have gone this far. I'm not sure what happened regarding the illegals going on, the gas and the electrical problems that were never properly upkept, but I like to hope she got punished in some way or form. That is crazy to think about, like how can you move someone into a house that you know has all these problems? That's just unsafe. Oh, so you can leave early for your anniversary, but I can't? I had the worst job. I mean, we've all had lousy jobs, but this takes the cake. I was hired on to be the shipping and receiving supervisor for a manufacturer of building supplies. Basically, I work in a tar factory. I was promised a whole bunch of things when I was hired in, and there were red flags because they were offering me about 40% more than I was making before. For one, I was a salaried employee, so I wasn't paid overtime. Also, no one had been in my position for about 3 months. Anyway, they fly me to nowhere, Arizona for a week to train, and the lady who trains me talks bad about my plant the entire time I'm there. I show up after training for a week, and things are, in a word, grim. They're behind almost $2 million in shipments, and there is paperwork from deliveries for the past 3 months that haven't been received into the system or filed. It's just stacked in a box. It's their busy season, but manufacturing is only producing about 30% of their daily quotas. So I'm constantly turning trucks away and trying to reschedule. I'm working 14-hour days 6 days a week, and I never see my wife or kids. And remember, no overtime. On an hour-by-hour basis, it was a 50% pay cut. I cancelled 3 family camping weekends, lose touch with my friends, and my sons cry every day when they see me putting my work boots on. Every day, the operations manager, the most mercurial jerk I've ever met, who is also in charge of the failing production team that is the reason why I work so late, leaves at 5 PM sharp. I'm very frustrated, but I keep getting promises of, "It'll get better soon," so I stick it out. After about a month and a half, my anniversary is coming up. I beg and plead, will someone please cover the desk for the evening so that I can leave at a decent hour and have dinner with my wife. I'm assured ahead of time that I can, but the day of, they all bail and totally screw me over. Fast forward another month, and a last-minute emergency that they create means that I have to come in on a Saturday, and a 2-hour commitment becomes all day because I'm stuck on a forklift loading and unloading trucks when the rest of the forklift drivers don't show up, ruining another weekend of family plans. So I've had it. I turn in my notice. And then the trouble begins. They pitch a fit that I'm leaving, so they shunt me into a corner and have someone else cover my desk. I get bombarded with emails, around 250 a day, second guessing every decision I make and demanding to know why they are still in the dire situation they've been in. Why hasn't this shipped yet? Because you morons haven't made it yet. Then the icing on the cake. They're flying someone from another plant to assist as I transition out. It's the battle axe that trained me, who hates our location and hates me. So I just leave. I send an email and tell them I won't be back. I have a new job already lined up, so I'm updating all the job sites with my new information, and one of the sites asks me to write a review of my time at the employer from hell. So I do. I write a brutal, scathing, incredibly honest and documentable, I saved copies of everything review that makes its way up to corporate. It's so bad that they start harassing me to remove it. I won't. They tried to pay the employees still there to write positive reviews to offset mine, so I post on my blog, which has great search engine credibility, a similar review with details about the company, the names of the idiot managers, and contact info if candidates want to know more. It's a top page rank if you Google the company, so they can't silence it. They then tried to mess around my retirement and benefits. In the US, you get insurance for the rest of the month after you leave the employer. I've had 3 people reach out since I posted. Remember all the documentation I saved? Yeah, I called OSHA, the EPA, and Homeland Security. They don't maintain their machines or forklifts, they don't dispose of waste properly, and they don't secure the aluminium paste according to regulations. So now they're dealing with a half a dozen agencies with acronyms, and they still can't find anyone to sit in my old desk. All I wanted was to go home on my anniversary. That's really good how we got there in the end, but it kinda sucks that he was doing this like 14-hour days, 6 days a week. Like, people should just not be doing that. Screw over your employees? Don't be too shocked when your dirty laundry starts catching up to you. So I need to keep this somewhat vague to maintain anonymity, and I wasn't there for all of it. This mostly happened to my friend, who was one of the employees screwed over, but I did what I could to help my friend get revenge. Friend of mine was employed as a barista for a coffee shop with a couple of locations. Well, the owner turned out to be a grade A scumbag. Started paying the employees with bad checks, not giving them their tips if they were paid on a credit card. Obviously, he couldn't steal their cash tips, not that he didn't try. Things along those lines. He was, of course, stealing from the business to fund his own lavish lifestyle. My friend was ticked and quit shortly after this nonsense started, and of course the business shortly went under. But if that's all that happened, this wouldn't fit in pro-revenge. Now, my friend was out a few $1,000s. I'm not sure exactly how much, but enough that it was serious to hit their budget. And they weren't the only one. This creep was the classic con man, writing checks to cover the bad checks, all the delay tactics you ever see. Oh, the bank must have messed up, just redeposit it. And of course, it comes back as a bad check a week or two later. Lots of shady stuff. But he was a good con man. All told, 8 people were getting screwed over to, I found out later, in excess of $20,000. So one afternoon, my friend is telling me this story, how he's so sick and tired of being conned by this creep, as well as everyone else. And here is where the pro-revenge part begins to come into effect. I start digging into the business owner, all public record stuff, and some of it I learned from my friend, or their co-workers, but started to learn a lot about this scumbag. Number 1, he's got multiple felonies in his past. I'm all for giving people a second chance, but this guy wasn't that old, and had racked up easily a half a dozen felonies. Why he wasn't still in jail is a topic for a much different forum. Number 2, one of his convictions was for being a felon in possession of a firearm. And number 3, he was currently on probation for the above conviction. This is where things start to get interesting. A little more light digging, and I come up with the name of his probation officer. When I sat and talked to my friend about what I had found out about his prior employee, 2 cycles of bounce checks were enough, he happened to mention that he had seen firearms in his apartment. They'd hung out together socially before things went completely pear-shaped. He'd used his girlfriend to purchase firearms since he was a prohibited person. Straw purchase, yet another felony. So now things get really interesting. I put my friend in contact with Scumbag's probation officer. Turns out, when you're out on probation, there's a lot of things you're not allowed to do. One of them is commit more felonies. This is an automatic revocation of your probation and will land your happy little butt back in jail. Oh, and knowingly passed bad checks in our state for the amount he was writing them for is a felony in and of itself. 8 employees, 3 payroll cycles, before the business officially went belly up, 23 felony counts of passing a bad check, since my buddy bailed at 2 cycles, and repeat offense for being a felon in possession of a firearm. As if it's not bad enough, when his probation officer came a knock-in to check on these allegations, he also found pharmaceutical paraphernalia and pharmaceutical stuff sufficient to get him for possession of controlled substances with intent to distribute. Multiple different pharmaceutical stuff, so multiple counts of that too. For those keeping score at home, if he was convicted of all these counts, he would be looking at roughly an additional 30 felonies, easily enough to keep him in jail for a very long time. Now, if this was petty revenge, this is where things would have stopped. But no, you see, the state has this fund that all employees pay a tax into. It's a fund for those situations where the company goes out of business, writes bad checks for their employees, etc. And it's administered by the State Labor Board. So they pay out to cover the lost wages, but not the lost tips of the employees. But the state is not benevolent in this. Oh no. You see, in order to attempt to recoup their losses, they can seize company assets. And in case of a poorly set up company with no separation of assets between the company and the owner, they can also seize personal assets. Oh yes, that shiny new company truck that you're towing your shiny new boat with? Guess what, scumbag? They now belong to the state. Your bank accounts? Yeah, those belong to the state now too. Now, surely you must be thinking, surely this is now pro-revenge, right? Oh no. You see, this scumbag messed with my friend, and I don't take kindly to that kind of nonsense. You see, my friend learned throughout this process that on top of all of this, his former employer was committing tax fraud/evasion. As far as the employees were concerned, they were straight up W-4 employees, meaning he was withholding the correct taxes, payroll taxes, Medicare taxes, etc. Except he was reporting to the IRS that all of his employees were independent contractors, and wasn't actually withholding any taxes at all. Taxes for the company? He was fudging those so badly they should have been sold as brownies. Unfortunately for Scumbag, a friend of mine happened to work for the local IRS office, and after sitting with him over drinks one evening, found out that the IRS had a tip line for reporting tax evasion. And depending on how it's reported, well, turns out that that person reporting the tax evasion may actually get a small percentage as a reward for turning in the tax cheat. So, on top of facing 30 some odd felony charges, on top of having all his personal and company assets seized, Scumbag now has the IRS chasing after him. That, dear readers, is pro-revenge. Some people just don't learn, do they? How can you commit more felonies after being on probation? Hey everyone, I hope you all had a really good day and that you enjoyed that video. If you want to check out some other videos, then click on screen right now or check out the playlist down below. If you enjoyed that video, then please do leave a like. And if you want to submit your own stories, then you can do so by joining the Discord in the top link in the description. But thank you so much for watching and I will see you very soon.